She tried to kick my pregnant wife out of the delivery room while my wife was in active labor. And she wasn't just anyone. She was the HOA president, standing there in her pressed blazer and fake smile, threatening to fine us while my wife screamed in pain. What she didn't know was that I was recording every single word, and that recording would be the thing that finally brought her down. My name's Daniel Reeves. I've lived in Maplewood Reserve for almost a decade, one of those picture-perfect neighborhoods with white fences, identical mailboxes, and an HOA that acts more like a royal court than a community board. My wife Emily and I bought our home here right after we got married. She's kind, gentle, and at 7 months pregnant she was still trying to keep the house spotless because, well, we thought that's what you had to do to keep the HOA happy. Our trouble started when her doctor told us we needed to install a small ramp by the porch. Emily's pregnancy was high risk, and there was a chance she'd need emergency help fast. So I built one. Simple, sturdy, matched the color of the house. I thought I was being responsible. But apparently responsible wasn't part of Patricia Bauer's vocabulary, our HOA president. Patricia was the type of woman who treated bylaws like the 10 Commandments. She was always walking around with that little clipboard barking at people about mailbox heights, lawn shades, or trash bins being an inch too far from the curb. She'd fine you for breathing wrong. The first time she saw the ramp, she marched over like a cop who'd just caught a criminal. "That structure violates HOA standards," she snapped. "Unapproved exterior modifications are not permitted." I wiped the sawdust from my hands and said, "It's for my wife. Doctor's orders." Patricia squinted at me, fake smiled, and said, "Then you should have asked for permission." Permission. To make sure my pregnant wife could walk safely into her own home. That night I got an email with a formal violation notice and a $200 fine. Emily was already crying from stress. I sent a long response explaining everything doctor's note attached. I didn't hear back. A week later, she showed up again. Clipboard heels, that same smug tone. "You have 48 hours to remove it or face additional fines," she said, handing me the paper like she was serving a court summons. I tried reasoning with her. "This ramp could save her life," I said. "You don't have a heart, do you?" Patricia's lips tightened. Rules are rules. I could feel my pulse in my ears. And what happens when the rules hurt people? She just turned and walked away. 2 nights later, Emily's contractions started early. She was only 32 weeks along. It was chaos, her screaming, me fumbling to grab the hospital bag, the 911 operator telling me an ambulance was on the way. When the EMTs arrived, they wheeled the stretcher up, and right there in the middle of flashing lights, Patricia appeared again. She stepped into the yard, waving her phone recording. "This is an unauthorized structure," she shouted. "You're violating HOA code section." One of the EMTs barked, "Lady, get out of the way." But she wouldn't. She stood there blocking them. Emily was crying out from inside the house, and Patricia, "God help me," she just kept lecturing. "I'm documenting this. The HOA will not be liable for any damages caused by your negligence." I turned toward her, shaking. "Move, now," she smirked. "Don't raise your voice at me, Daniel. I'm the president of this community." And that's when I tapped the small camera clipped to my shirt. "Good," I said. "Then you'll want to make sure your lawyer sees this video." Her face changed instantly, that little flicker of panic, but she tried to play it cool. "Are you threatening me?" "No," I said quietly. "I'm protecting my family." The EMTs brushed past her, loaded Emily in, and we sped off. I swear I saw Patricia still standing there in the headlights, clutching her clipboard like it was her crown. At the hospital, everything was chaos. Doctors rushing, nurses shouting numbers, alarms beeping. Emily's blood pressure was dangerously high. I held her hand while they prepped her for emergency surgery. That ramp, the one Patricia called an eyesore, was the reason she got out of the house fast enough. While I waited outside the operating room, anger started boiling inside me. I wasn't just mad, I was disgusted. How could someone be so obsessed with power that they'd interfere in a medical emergency? I replayed the footage from the camera, every word, every tone, every smug glance. And then I realized she'd done this to other people too. At the last HOA cookout, a neighbor mentioned how Patricia fined her for having a non-compliant wheelchair ramp for her elderly father. Another guy said she trespassed onto his property just to measure the height of his hedge. She ruled this place like a dictator, and everyone was too scared to fight back. But now, I had proof. When Emily finally woke up, she was exhausted but stable. Our baby girl was in the NICU, tiny but strong. I kissed her forehead and promised her no one's ever going to hurt us again. When we got home 2 days later, Patricia had doubled the fine. She even added a note that said further non-compliance may result in HOA board action. That's when I realized this wasn't just pettiness. It was a power trip. For a few days I thought about letting it go. I was tired, overwhelmed, juggling hospital bills and a newborn in intensive care. I sat at the kitchen table one night staring at the violation letter and actually thought, maybe I should just take it down. Maybe peace was worth it. Then Emily, weak but fierce, said something I'll never forget. If you take it down, she wins. And if she wins, she'll do it to someone else. She was right. I couldn't let it go. So I went on the offensive. I gathered every HOA bylaw, every architectural code, every county safety regulation. I built a binder thick enough to knock someone out with. I compared Patricia's citations to the actual rules and found over a dozen cases where she'd violated procedures herself. Unauthorized fines, missing approval forms, even backdated signatures. Then one night a man knocked on my door. It was Marcus, one of the paramedics who'd helped Emily. I remembered him from the HOA board meetings too. He looked nervous. "Listen," he said quietly, "I shouldn't be here, but I can't stay quiet anymore." He handed me a folder. Inside were meeting minutes. From the HOA ones, Patricia never filed publicly. They showed that she'd been issuing violations without board votes. She was faking approvals, bypassing rules, and hiding it all behind her authority. "This could get her fired," Marcus said. "No," I replied, "this will end her." Over the next week, I made copies of everything: the video, the medical note, Marcus's documents. I filed an official complaint with the county building inspector and sent anonymous copies to every board member. Then I waited. On Friday night, Patricia called an emergency HOA meeting. I showed up early. The room was packed, neighbors whispering, phones recording tension thick enough to choke on. She stood at the front with her usual smirk. "We're here tonight to discuss ongoing code violations at the Reeves residence," she began. "These homeowners have repeatedly ignored official warnings." I stood up. "That's a lie." Gasps. People turned. Patricia's face went cold. "You're out of order, Daniel." I walked forward, set my laptop on the table, and hit play. The projector screen lit up, and there she was in full HD, screaming at EMTs while my wife was being loaded into the ambulance. The room went dead silent. You could hear her own voice echoing off the walls. "Remove this structure immediately." Her composure cracked. "This is private footage," she shouted. I smiled. "Actually, it's evidence. Evidence that you obstructed a medical emergency." Then Marcus stood up from the back, holding the folder. "And here's proof you've been falsifying HOA documents." He read out loud her email to another board member. "Secure removal before he rallies support." Neighbors started murmuring. One woman gasped, "She fined me for my mailbox." Another shouted, "You lied to all of us." Patricia slammed her clipboard down. "You people don't understand how hard this job is. I was trying to keep this community in order." I looked her dead in the eyes. "No, you were trying to control it." For once, she didn't have a comeback. Her face went pale. She grabbed her purse and stormed out of the room to a mix of gasps and laughter. The next morning, every neighbor had a copy of that video in their inbox. The county inspector visited later that week and not only confirmed our ramp was compliant, but that Patricia herself had violated multiple state codes with her unauthorized inspections. 3 days later, she resigned. Personal reasons. That was the phrase she used. Her house went up for sale a month after that. I never saw her again, but sometimes I catch myself glancing at that ramp when I walk by. It's still there, solid, unmovable, the same way we stood our ground. Emily recovered. Our daughter's thriving now. And that ramp, the one that started it all, reminds me of one thing. Power only works when people are afraid to stand up to it. And once you start recording the truth, their power ends where your proof begins.